Hey, this is Cameron. Welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. Today we are going to supplement this beautiful Lee Jujube with this long Jujube that I just recently got. Let's get busy. The saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. That way you'd enjoy its shade and fruit today. And if you didn't plant one 20 years ago, there's a second best time to plant a tree. You know when it is? Right now. Waiting another day, waiting another month or a year for when it's convenient is not going to make them grow any faster, and certainly if you want trees, isn't going to help you get to trees if you continue to wait. Get out there today, plant one today. We're going to walk through how to do something like that. Something you saw in a previous video when I was at Home Depot, I randomly saw, as I was walking through the garden section, this is my practice over there, I saw a long Jujube, L-A-N-G, and what long does is it can be pollinated by Lee. Lee doesn't need a pollinator, long does. And so when I found this long, I thought, man, another cultivar of Jujube. We've just really started to love these Jujubes so much. They're so tasty. They're like pest-free. I haven't seen anything on there, and yet they're so incredibly sweet and yummy. Kind of a secret hidden fruit that most people don't know about. And so what I'm gonna do is, before it gets any hotter out here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take and plant this potted Jujube next to this established Jujube. Look how many fruit are on here. Can you see all that fruit? Just growing. This is doing such a wonderful job. One of the happiest trees in our entire orchard is this Lee Jujube. So I have a video about the Lee Jujube. It talks a little bit more about it, so you should go check it out. Anyway, I'm gonna put this thing on a tripod and then walk through a little bit of how you wanna prep and get the space ready for planting another tree. You may have also noticed how short this is. I made a pruning cut right here a few days ago. I made another video about that. With these deciduous trees, because we want the scaffolding, just like this Lee Jujube, I did the exact same thing to this, and look how full it is. Look how well it's doing. So I want you to feel confident when it comes to making those knee-high pruning cuts on a new tree, on a young tree especially. They grow out, and yet look how low this structure is. I'm not having to reach up and go get a ladder. I'm able to get fruit all the way from seriously down almost like an ankle high, all the way up. And so I'm gonna keep this checked no higher than I can reach. We're gonna have, when this tree's as big as we're gonna let it get, thousands and thousands of fruit. Probably will hang on something like this as it matures. So we're gonna plug in that Lee, that long. Well, as I'm gonna plant this, I have some considerations on where exactly do I want to plant it. It really is not established yet, and so when it's in the ground, it's gonna be even shorter. So do I want that on the north side of the existing one? Where is it gonna get crowded out? What's it gonna do once it's fully grown? Is it going to start interfering with our other stuff over here? Where do we have the most amount of space? If I look on this side, everything on this side is pretty vigorous. I'm gonna allow these oranges to get pretty big, so those might crowd in here. What I'm tempted to do in looking at this space is to have it probably near where it's at. Perhaps I'll have it, just pulled out a little ways so it's able to get some of that southern exposure. We have a little bit of open space here, kind of a walkway, or really like a driveway that we're wanting to keep open, so that way we have access from the back fence here. So I think it growing into that direction is going to give it the most opportunity for sun, as well as the most space to grow out, so that way I'm not having to come and continually check it. And frankly, in this walkway area here, we have a lot more room for it to grow out in this direction. I'm gonna plant it right there. Well, a couple of things you wanna pay attention to as you are planting a new kind of tree next to an existing one is, as you go down with that shovel, you are going to disturb some of the roots probably of the existing one. So don't be surprised if you see a little bit of shock happen, some leaf drop, maybe some fruit drop on your tree when you first plant another one next to it. Something I'm gonna try to do over here is to be far enough out where I'm not really gonna be near any of the main roots, and we'll hopefully only get some of the feeder roots that are near the edges as I dig this hole. So I'm gonna get digging in. What I've got here is this awesome Fisker's shovel. This is really great. They call it the world's best shovel. It's been pretty good. It's nice to have a heavy metal shovel as you're coming down, and also have my goat skin gloves. Super, make this a lot easier. So as we come down here, I notice that there is a rock that is going to cause an issue. And so I'm going to probably dig this out of the way. I'm going to find out and mark where I want to plant this, and then I'm going to dig a hole that's twice the size width and twice the length of this potted plant. One bucket is going to be for the mulch on the top, so that way I'll be able to lay that back on, and this is for any of the soil that I take out. These are just some old, it's handy to keep these around for something like this. The issue here is that we live right across the street essentially from a rock quarry. So that scraping sound you hear is rocks that I'm trying to dislodge. I want to get rid of some of the rocks that are going to be right near the root base, so that way the roots have a way to expand without immediately running into rocks. It's a boy! Now is a good idea to take this thing with a pot and put it in here, see how it looks. Right here is where there's a graft. You always want this graft to be well above the soil level when you're planting. Definitely don't want to plant. And what we actually want to do is we're going to want to plant the plant a little bit high and tight. That's what I've heard on another channel, and it makes a lot of sense. Gives those roots a chance to get out and expand. And so we're going to plant this. You're going to notice when we plant it in the ground, I'm not going to have it even level with the soil. I'm going to have the soil level around it about here, and then I'm going to mound up dirt around it. Now what I'd like to do now is to figure out which direction I want to rotate this. I want all of these to grow away from the inside of this one, so I'm going to put all of the little branches facing out from this. And so rather than have everything growing so that it's going to grow into the middle of the group here, I want them rotated so that they are going to flush out this way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a minute to loosen up the soil around it just by hitting it a few times. And then just very gently, I'm only doing this for support. I'm not pulling it by this. I'm really wanting to almost empty it out. So something you might notice here is that there are a lot of roots that are kind of have swirled around to the inside of the pot. I'm going to break those up a little bit, and I'm going to have those facing out, so that way those roots will extend out as opposed to continuing this circular method. This is sometimes what's called root bound, and I'm going to make sure that these are facing out, so I might break that up a little bit so it isn't conforming to the shape of the pot any longer. You want to make sure to look down and make sure that this is being planted straight up, so that way it's not at some sort of weird angle. You can angle it slightly away from your other tree. These are never going to get so tall that it's going to be leaning 30 feet tall, but you definitely don't want it leaning into the tree. So take a look, pay attention, make sure that the branches are going the direction you want. Make sure that the trunk is going straight up and down, and then start backfilling. Now this soil is pretty good. It has a lot of nutrients that are going in there from the mulch above it. So I'm not going to be putting any sort of amendment in here. Sometimes people will put like a little, garden soil or that. This I don't think needs it. There's lots of organic material, and I'm going to come back and fertilize it in about a week. You want the soil around this to be nice and tight. Remember, when all that water comes in, the soil around it's going to be really tight as well. And so now is a good time to draw back in that mulch layer and bring back what we put out on the top. So now we've got a few inches of mulch, which is great. And you always want that pulled back away from the trunk. You always want your mulch to be pulled back away from the trunk, so that way you don't get any stem rot. Now we have to come in and water. So one reason why watering is so important is because the water is going to go down and bring out any air pockets and let the soil really settle on itself. So watering is very crucial. Okay, a couple of other things you want to pay attention to when you're planting a fruit tree. One is when you're cutting that hole, you want to make sure that a lot of times when your shovel goes down, it'll sometimes cut in and create a very smooth edge. You don't want to leave that smooth edge, because what happens is a root will go and it'll think it's a solid structure. So if it's not already kind of crumbled up, you want to crumble that a little bit on the sides, either with your fingers, one of those little garden rakes or something like that, to break it up, so that way it's just dirty as opposed to just a very smooth, firm edge. Another thing is that when you are planting, you want to pay attention to the type of soil that you have. The soil in this part of the orchard is very good. It's got a good mix of kind of clayish, loamy, not super sandy, not super silty, as opposed to where our avocados are. That's super silty, doesn't drain at all. So if I were to plant this jujube over there, I would have planted that further above grade and mounded good soil up on top of it, because it really doesn't drain over there. So pay attention, get familiar with how well your soil drains around where you're planting. I want to make sure that it's going to get, when you plant a tree, remember, for the first time you plant it, this is kind of traumatic to a new tree, especially one that is leafing and is not dormant. And so don't be surprised if you see some leaf drop. That's okay. You should take off all of the fruit on a new tree. If there's any fruit, don't let any set at all. You want it to divert its energy into putting out roots and putting out nice branches. So take off all of the fruit. Finally, when you plant a new tree, they're more sensitive. They will need more water than regular. So come out and maybe give this, we're gonna come out and give this some extra water. And you also, now is a great time to paint that tree with something like Ivy Organics. I'm gonna do that actually as soon as I'm done with this watering. I'm gonna come out and paint it, I'm gonna whitewash it. There's a whole video I have on that one with the importance of whitewashing your tree when you first plant it, to prevent it from getting sunburned. It's going to prevent pests from coming in and interfering with it straight away, gnawing at the trunk. So this needs to be whitewashed right away. They're the most sensitive when they're young, so take care of them when they're young and they'll do good for you. Well, I hope you have had fun watching this episode of the Busy Gardener channel as we planted this long jujube next to the other one. You can see how well these trees do when they're cut to knee high. It lets you come in and be able to make them later pruning cuts. You can harvest fruit more easily when they're shorter. You look around the orchard, every one of these trees has been, look at the giant tree over there. All of these were cut down originally to knee high, and they're doing so well, with the exception of those citrus. I didn't cut those down to knee high. Those grow more as a shrub as it is. But every other tree, everything where the leaves drop, every deciduous tree, the stone fruit, the apples, all of that were cut down to knee high. And they're doing terrific. Look at that. The nectarines, the cherries, the apples, the persimmon even. Gosh, on that side, you'd be shocked at the pomegranates, like the plums and the pluots and the pluaries and all the other aughts and aries. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed tuning into this episode. If you'd like to subscribe, we'd love to have you. If you feel like I've earned your subscription, be sure to do that below. Get notified too, hit the bell, post this, like it. But most of all, don't be afraid to plant a tree. Don't be afraid to make those pruning cuts. Don't be afraid to get out here and do this. As you can see, and I will attest, I work full time, busy with family, busy in ministry, and yet this has become such a wonderful thing to come out and do. And fruit trees are a great way. They're not super sensitive like veggies. You can do this, so get out there and plant a tree. I have links to some of the gear that I use in the description and the notes below. If you've got questions, I'd love to hear, what have you planted this season? Maybe put those down in the comments. What are some questions that you've got? Love hearing your questions, love hearing your comments. Keep that going. Whether you've got one tree in your orchard or 500, until next time, stay busy.